Okay, now we're going to move to another great friend. Sudip Parikh is CEO of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. If you have not figured it out, I'm a big fan of science, a big believer in science. I want to have lots of science in the ecosystem, but it's not always even and wobbly. It can be wobbly. Sudip, great to see you, my friend. Thank you.
Great to be here, Steve. Thank you.
I guess it was a couple of years ago, I like to talk about our dinners, and this dinner was called the, Science Technology Emergency Committee, I think it was. And we had I brought the head of the National Science Foundation, NIH, we had people from DARPA, we had science aficionado, glitterati there. And I gotta tell you, it was one of the most impactful dinners I've ever had, but the mood was vigorous, but really depressing.
Yeah.
In terms of the state of things. So I just want to kind of be honest and real right now as we're discussing this topic, which is keeping American science first. How are we doing?
Short answer is not well. When I look at science across this country, and I spend every day doing that as executive publisher of Science Magazine, what I see is a system under incredible stress and incredible uncertainty. We have scientists that are doing great discoveries every day. You just heard from John about some of the things that are getting him excited. There are basic discoveries happening right now that will be the talk of the town 10 years from now. That is happening. But at the same time, we're putting tremendous pressure on these scientists, especially the young ones, because we're giving uncertainty on funding. We are telling them that grants will be approved not by the NIH or the National Science Foundation, but at OMB. That is a different era and something I'm really worried about.
What do we need to do to change it?
Yeah. My own feeling is that, of course, there are stresses, and of course, there are problems in that research ecosystem for the last 20 years. We have had great success. When you look at the types of things that we've been able to accomplish in this country, it's mind-boggling. We have folks who are old enough to be grandparents who have cystic fibrosis. That's a miracle. We have people who are living with HIV and AIDS as a chronic disease into eldership, and that is a miracle. We have folks who have things like diamond blackfan anemia, which is a disease that affects young babies that we can cure today. That is a remarkable thing that we live in a time that's like that. And so to fix this problem, I think what we have to do is recognize what was good about that system, recognize what were the challenges to it, and be willing to change it, but not destroy it in the way that we are working towards right now.
So I've always tried to kind of, when I'm with you, I try to get out of my own, biases and structures and ask us this. Yeah. And I don't mean it because I know it's in a way you're worried about American leadership in this and competing and having everybody understand they've got to, urgently focus on this arena. Yeah. Another part of me is saying AI is coming like a tsunami. Yeah. AI is going to make a lot of, some people superhuman, some scientists super scientists. And I just wonder, is there a story here that we're missing or not anticipating that maybe all the clunkiness and bad investment choices and the mismanagement of the science ecosystem is going to be solved by the flood of new tech that's just going to take care of it all?
It's not a panacea. Look, we're going to muddle through. Yeah. I'm not someone who's prone to hyperbole. I don't like hyperbole. We're going to muddle through. And what we can do is actually do something extraordinary with these new technologies. Mm-hmm. We're in a moment where things like AlphaFold are remarkable. They enable us to look at protein targets for disease and know what the structures of these proteins are without having actually determined the structure. The problem with that is there aren't that many other data sets like that in biology. And so the idea that we're going to cure disease because we've gotten to AGI is a little bit fantastic to me. The idea that we're going to get there faster because of AGI or because of AI or because of machine learning is absolutely true. It's already happening. It's already happening.
We had breakfast this morning and you went through a litany of these things that the National Science Foundation had funded. We were talking about Lilly's big, bold bet right now on obesity drugs and therapies. And you said, well, that had an NSF base. Yeah. Can you go through that for our audience?
I would love to. All these things that we get excited about. So GLP-1s right now, it's from lizards. Lizards. The drug Taxol was from the Pacific yew tree. The gene editing technology that is saving the life of baby KJ was discovered because a bunch of grad students went out and were just trying to figure out why bacteria have DNA repeats in their systems. They weren't trying to they weren't trying to cure anybody. They were out just understanding the universe. And by understanding the universe, we've been able to harness some of that. And that's what the NSF does. We wouldn't have NVIDIA if it wasn't for the fact that the National Science Foundation and others funded a guy named Jeffrey Hinton who was mapping bird brains. And people thought he was nuts. And he just won the Nobel Prize last year, along with the folks at DeepMind, because AI has become a thing. But 25 years ago, it wasn't recognized as that. So what's trendy and what's politically popular right now isn't going to tell us what's going to be useful and powerful 25 years from now. In fact, what does that is a place like the National Science Foundation, which is a rounding error in the federal government. It is decimal dust on the balance sheet of NVIDIA, and yet it is the source of every one of these things.
How do you win the whatever geostrategic, geotech, geoeconomic race with China without a robust science world?
You don't. I testified last year. I pride myself on, this is not a partisan argument. I was a bipartisan witness to the Appropriations Committee, and they asked me this question. They said, if this budget passes, what are the impacts? And the budget last year was a proposal to cut NIH and NSF, the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, by over 50%. And I said, if we actually implemented that budget, we would no longer be in a race with China. I go to China every year, not because I'm trying to sell our secrets or because I'm trying to give them help, but because we need visibility to appear. We need visibility to a place where scientists are doing great science. And we need to understand what our competition is like. And so you cannot win that race if you're not investing and if you're not also putting in place the right policies about how you determine how that funding is used. If it's determined by trendiness or by politics, we will lose. The Soviets proved that 50, 60, 70 years ago.
You know, one of the greatest turbochargers to American scientific innovation was kind of, letting professors have part of the action.
Yeah.
There was a legislation passed called the Bayh-Dole Act. Don't ask why I know this. It's from my ancient past. I know I've never been on Jeopardy, but boy, if I would be ready for it, the Bayh-Dole Act. But I'm interested in the Bayh-Dole Act basically created the platforms by which academic research, universities, private companies could ally, work together, deal with property rights and innovate, and we saw innovation boost.
Yeah.
Is that enough, or do we need a Bayh-Dole Act too? Do you think there are other elements there by way, you can, bypass some of the gloom you're talking about, bring more resources in, and get yet another again of surge in the United States?
Yeah, I don't want to be a harbinger of doom. I think there's incredible opportunity no matter what. So one of the things that is happening is that we have this incredible ecosystem in the United States. And so one of our unique superpowers is to be able to match up capital with the right risk tolerance. So if there's a risky thing out there, we'll find capital that's willing to do for that risk, and we'll put it towards it. And we've done this in a way that's been a virtuous cycle for us, where we've gotten discovery, we've gotten investment, and we can build out amazing trillion-dollar industries. And what's changed now since the passage of Bayh-Dole is that a lot of the technology and infrastructure for science is actually sitting in private companies. There's not data centers that are owned by the National Institutes of Health that can compete in any way with Colossus that's owned by XAI, or the data centers that are owned by the other large AI companies. And so we have to find a way now through Bayh-Dole to actually have it be not just a one-way thing where, okay, the academic can make money because they've partnered with industry, but that there's a reason and incentive structure to make it that virtuous cycle again. And so I think that is really important. I'm not just here to talk about federal funding. What I'm here to talk about is the ecosystem itself, and that by putting in place ideas of, gosh, a budget analyst at OMB should be choosing where the next direction is versus that amazing young scientist, I think we're wrong. I think it's going to hurt us, and I think that's the thing we have to guard against.
I mean, you have such a huge association of members and scientists out there. I'm just interested in what insights you see from all your members, because your insights are going to be greater than mine, even though I try to read science every month. But I'm just sort of interested in what you see by way of really cool, game-changing, next-generation innovations out there, just because you see the trend. We're going to bring this great guy in, Jonathan Epstein. I've never met him, but he's like a giant, in the Penn Med world, and he is one of these great people who's sitting over an ecosystem of unbelievable experience. So I'm just interested, as you kind of look at a broader terrain than even Jonathan Epstein has, what's out there that will be exciting for us?
Well, he's got an amazing story, which I'm not going to steal his thunder, but just his own work is extraordinary.
Okay.
And is going to lower the price of important medicines. It's remarkable. And the basis of it is mRNA, which is a dirty word sometimes in Washington. But this is what I need folks to understand, is that politics and trends don't matter. Data and impact matter. And so when you ask me what's something that's exciting, I cover all of science. And so let me just talk about something that just gives me a lot of joy and awe, which is the telescopes that we're putting into space. Right, and opening up on the ground. We are opening up vistas that we've never seen before. We have a telescope right now that is monitoring the skies. Every night they cover the entire sky. And what that means is you can see the asteroids and the rocks and the other things that are out there that are moving across our night sky every night. And it's remarkable. There's like 4,000 things up there every night that are moving. And so now you might say, well, what good is that for this conference? The technology that's used to monitor that sky, the AI that's built, the machine learning that's built to monitor that sky, BD is a sponsor here, I see. Imaging, diagnostics, that's the same technology, the same mathematics, the same physics that is going on. And so when you can bring those talented individuals who've worked to do those algorithms, they can work in the medical device space, they can work on Wall Street. There are billionaires who are being made through quants. This is the kind of thing that all ties together. And so when you see an amazing new telescope, recognize that it has huge impact even in the field of medicine and the field of diagnostics.
Wow. You want to hang out for a few minutes? You like Jonathan Epstein, right? Does he like you?
I don't know.
Okay, we'll find out. If he doesn't like you...
Did you call me the Joan of Arc of science?
I did call you the Joan of Arc of science.
All right.
Are you okay with that?
Sure.
All right. Well, why don't you take this seat right over here? Hang out with us. I didn't tell Jonathan I was going to do this. Please welcome to the stage Jonathan Epstein, Dean of the Perelman School of Medicine, Executive Vice President of the University of Pennsylvania for the Health System. John, thank you so much. Big round of applause. So thank you. Jonathan, we've been having a marathon today. Today's a marathon of back-to-back discussions with different leaders and innovators and thinkers in the kind of, not only just the American healthcare ecosystem, but really the global in many ways because of the impact of what's happened here. I know that you changed your entire day and commitments to be elsewhere to be here today. So first of all, big thank you to him for doing that. He's one of this. And if you don't know how important the University of Pennsylvania is in all of this, so we're talking about the AI moment and what AI is already changing in medical research. You're seeing around the corner. I don't know what in the heck your big news is. No one said, "Hey, your big news." What's your big news?
Well, first, you were saying such nice things about me. I wanted you to just
Well, he's the
keep
Joan
talking
of Arc
for a while,
of science. I need to
thank
figure
you
out what
so
you
much for saying that. I think Sadiq was very nicely referring to some work from my own laboratory that wasn't AI and wasn't what you're asking about, but
mRNA. mRNA's next chapter.
Exactly. The advances that we've made over the years have led to or have contributed to the idea that we might be able to engineer the immune system in the body, as opposed to taking your cells out and engineering them in a dish and growing them to make CAR T cells. We've come up with a way to use mRNA to directly target T cells in the body. And John Crawley was talking about the importance of bringing the cost down.
So you're going to win the Nobel Prize?
No, but I was fortunate to work with people who have won the Nobel Prize. Drew Weissman and others, and others who should win the Nobel Prize, like Carl June, to advance this approach.
And I just want to acknowledge my business partner, Richard Vague, who's on the board of Penn Med. Carl June is the Richard W. Vague Professor of Immunotherapy. Right. So there is a little bit of a connection. So if Richard had anything to do with you getting down here, thank you, Richard, very much. But I don't know if you've heard very much of today's forum, but we really are interested in bold bets, right, and what it takes to make them. You've been making them. I think you're probably genetically designed to make bold bets. What are the lessons in terms of bold bet making that you think we in the room, particularly in the policy space, but other parts of the healthcare ecosystem could learn from in terms of the wild leaps you've been making?
Yeah, so Zeke Emanuel likes to say that 4 of the 5 greatest breakthroughs in biomedicine in the last couple of decades happened at Penn, and I like to hear Zeke say that. But gene therapy for curing blindness, mRNA therapeutics, CAR T cells, new Alzheimer's drugs, they all started at Penn. We weren't the discoverers of CRISPR, but we were the first to use it in people, with baby KJ and curing an inherited metabolic defect. So we have contributed to a lot of breakthroughs, and we like to say that each one of them is an overnight discovery that took 20 years to develop. And I think one of the tricks is that we're able to take the long view, and we're able to invest over decades in ideas. And that's why we need academic institutions to couple with the private sector, because most companies can't take that long a view. They're mostly focused on quarterly.
We feed people what? This is the United Airlines model. We feed people in their seats and keep it going, no break. Is the lunch any good? Yeah, good. Okay, thumbs up. Excellent. So you're doing that, and so as you're kind of putting these things together, one of the things I'm really interested in is the economics of science and innovation and how you bring them to a product. I mean, Lilly, one of our big sponsors, BD and others, when you're kind of looking at the economics of science innovation research, until I got into the guts of some of the GLP-1 stuff and began looking at it, it's really hard. Like, it's staggering. I would never go into the business that they're in. Sorry, guys. But what I'm also interested in is how it gets from the lab to become a product. And what I've learned from Richard and others is there's something called you have to go through the valley of death.
Yep.
I'm interested in how much science is stranded because it can't get in through the valley of death.
Yeah, I think it's changing rapidly. And I think that...
Is it better?
It's gotten better. And I think, I've been running my own lab for 30 years. And when I started, I think we thought our goal was to publish papers and hope that a company read our papers and picked up on it. And a lot of stuff died in that intervening period where nobody picked up on it. And I think what we've learned through a number of successes, some of which I mentioned, is that we need to carry the ball farther and partner with the private sector to make sure things don't get dropped in that valley of death. And that means spinning out new companies that we remain close to until they pick up momentum and bring in enough capital to bring those ideas forward. Or work directly with partners in pharma to translate an idea. Or build the infrastructure for clinical trials so that we can move an idea from the laboratory to a clinical trial so it gets the attention of the private sector to be built out. And I think at many of our academic institutions, that's happening much more than it used to. And not all, but many. So I think we have improved over a couple of decades on that valley of death. How
is AI changing the game? Or is it?
You hear it at every conference you go to.
Yeah.
AI is changing everything.
Is it?
And that is true.
It is.
Yeah.
So can you disaggregate it so I can understand what is changing and what part of AI? I hate the AI. I like how Jensen Huang is talking about this 5-layer cake, because you can, take pieces of it and, think about it in bits and pieces, and communities can figure out how they can maximize some portion of this. AI has just become a blob to describe and define everything, but you're smart. You're also, I want people to know that Jonathan is a competitive ultimate Frisbee player. So I want to know how AI...
I don't know how that's relevant.
How has AI affected your Frisbee game? But
it hasn't made it any better.
Yeah.
But I give you 2 examples. I mean, I could give you 100 examples, but 2 examples of how we're using AI right now to advance the development of new medications. One is in the area of what we call immune health. And if you think of genomics and genetics as, what you're born with, the blueprint you're born with, we think of your immune fingerprint as what your exposures have been,
right,
and how your body records each one of those exposures. Your immune system is a built-in sensor of everything you experience. And if only we knew how to read the language of the immune system, we would know whether you're responding to a medicine, or whether you were sick, or whether you had cancer. And we can actually read millions of parameters of the immune system, but that becomes a big data problem. And AI is perfect for finding associations between big data streams and outcomes. And so we can couple that with your genetics and with your imaging results and your electronic medical record data. Now you've got a lot of data, and we can start following patient cohorts and ask, for instance, in a patient with multiple sclerosis who's treated with one of 6 different approved medicines, but nobody really knows which one is going to be right for that patient. We sort of try them and then move to the next one. We can predict after a single dose whether that patient's likely to respond or not. So we're using that in real time right now to develop those predictive models and algorithms. And I'll give you a second example. I talked about CAR T cells, and I'm very interested in CAR T cells. The whole goal with CAR T cells, or with radiopharmaceuticals, or with delivering lipid nanoparticles, is to find the right binder that brings that therapy to the right cell in the body. And that's a big problem, and it's very slow to do it cell by cell, trying to find the right binder. But there's a paper about to come out in Cell, I'm sorry to say.
Oh, I don't like
that uses AI to go
I knew there was
through-
going to be tension.
There's tension.
I counted on it.
Science probably rejected it, I don't know. But to go through all public databases of cellular expressed proteins and find unique markers or combinations of markers on specific cancers or specific cells. So now you could imagine finding binders for any cell you want. And that, again, is a perfect AI sort of problem. And now you can make your binder by using AlphaFold or other AI-driven algorithms to actually design the molecules that would become the binder as well. So this is going to hasten drug development quite dramatically, I think. So those are a couple of examples.
How vulnerable is that ecosystem, that creative ecosystem that you've described, to the things Sudip was talking about, which is cuts in NSF funding? I mean, on one hand, when I'm listening to all the things you're talking about, we're talking about industries that will be hundreds of billions of dollars of value, even more than that, and the life impacts are going to be staggering. So part of me is saying, who cares about $9 billion for the NSF? It's such a dinky amount of money. But on the other hand, what is Penn less immune because you have developed, you're like the Silicon Valley up there of advanced medical research, or are you worried about this eroding sets of early government investments?
Yeah, I'm certainly worried. I'd like to say this is the best of times, these are the worst of times. The possibilities are so enormous, and the chance that we could accelerate drug development are right there in front of us. And at the same time, our knees are being taken out from below us from these actions, and it is having a profound effect today on the early parts of the pipeline.
So if you had a message for this town, what it would be on that?
It makes no sense to me from an economic point of view or from a health point of view, to cut off the pipeline at the very start. We had to cut our graduate student teaching slots by a third because of funding cuts. So we're going to train less, and those are the people who go into industry and make the next discoveries. The amount of money it takes to start one of these breakthrough projects, this company I started, it was called Capson Therapeutics. It began with a $2 million gift, and it raised $350 million, and it got bought for $2.1 billion. The amount of money it takes at the beginning is tiny compared to what can be developed. And every economic impact study shows that. So never mind the disease is cured. Purely from an economic point of view, I don't understand the approach of making it harder to keep this engine running. So that would be my message to Washington, D.C.
One of the areas you've really focused on, I'm told, is moving science from the labs through translational steps to get this to patient care. A lot of what we talked about today is also about patient care, the interface with the patient, and the kind of psych there. When we had our friend from Lilly up here, he was saying his obsession is accessibility, reaching more and more people. What are your insights on what has to happen on that? Because I do think there is simultaneously enthusiasm in the country about science, but also kind of anxiety and irritation that so much of it's so far away from them, right? So
Yeah, I had a call from a Penn student who had graduated, was living in Louisville, Kentucky, and she has a rare genetic disorder. And there's a treatment available for it, but she was told she would have to wait 6 months to get insurance approval for that therapy. And meanwhile, she was suffering from it. It just makes no sense to me. As excited as I am about the scientific discoveries, we have a healthcare delivery problem in this country that we certainly need to take on. There's access problems, there's cost problems, there's too many middle people in the process of approvals that slow things down. So we do need to take those on. And I only wish we had the time and energy to take those on instead of dealing with some of the more mundane issues that we're consumed with.
Another thing, I've always sort of thought America was designed to be the brain drain problem for the rest of the world, that the smartest, coolest, best people were going to come to this country. And, apparently a lot of them end up at Penn. But I think if you look at science overall, I mean, you kind of look at how we've won wars in the past. Guess what? We've had, smart people over here who've been, part of that equation. So I am very pro bringing brains over here, university training, having these people root and seed and root companies here. And I remember I wrote an article when Bob Gates was head of Texas A&M University, our former Secretary of Defense. We co-wrote pieces in the New York Times together about, America's talent problem and talent pipeline. But that was after 9/11, and when we were blocking everybody from coming in the country. What impact? I want to kind of hear from you about, because when you talk about cutting, graduate assistant spots, but all this. Are you seeing the composite of talent coming into this country changing? Is it changing dramatically? Where is it going?
I think we can both speak to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can start. We're going to be, we have been this past year, the first time in my lifetime, a net exporter of scientific talent. That blows me away. That has not happened in my lifetime. And it's because of a couple of reasons. One is that we are, when you put out into the world that you want to cut the funding for science, it just tells people, maybe I should go somewhere else. The second is that...
And where are they going?
Folks, part of it is they're staying where they were. So if they are in China, they now have choices. They can go to Peking University or Tsinghua. These are excellent biomedical research and other types of science places. In Europe, they go to other countries in Europe. The UK is a big draw, right? Oxford and Cambridge are really seen as world class. And so there are competing places, and Canada is huge for Americans to go there. Now, I'm not an idiot. I understand that when you look at the total dollars, the total euros involved, Europe is not going to be taking all the scientists out of America. That's not going to happen. What's going to happen is that we're just going to have less potential energy of those scientists here, less breakthroughs, because if a third of those graduate students aren't going to Penn, that's a third of the people that would have been there to try and cure cancer, to try and cure Alzheimer's, to attack the problems that we want to attack. And they're just not going to be there. And the really dangerous part of that is that you don't know it. You don't know what you missed out on. And we've been an extraordinary country that has not missed out on a lot, but we're really playing with fire.
What are you seeing in your students?
We've lost some faculty to Canada, to Europe. Some faculty members who had moved from Europe to the U.S. are like, I'm out of here, going back home. And we get almost no postdocs now from overseas. The visa issues are too difficult and slow. And that used to be a major pipeline for our laboratories, to have postdocs coming from overseas. So it's been a palpable change. It's quite dramatic.
Do you work with any of the big platforms out there like Google or Anthropic or others? Are you beginning to see some of your work go in and be? Because I remember years ago at the Aspen Health Forum, we were kind of trying to do what we're doing today, de-silo some of our discussion in health. So we had some Google guys came in and they basically, guess what? They're really good at information reorganization processing. But we were talking about this like 8, 9, 10 years ago, and before people were really even used to understanding what that meant. But are you finding yourself interacting with these players?
Absolutely. And in both the health system around delivery of care and the other aspects of managing electronic medical records and health systems, but also on the fundamental basic science side. But there's a little bit of a discrepancy between solving problems today with AI, where in the healthcare sphere, many of the big Google, Anthropic, et cetera, don't yet have the usable solutions. They're still building big solutions.
Right.
And there are small companies that have built usable solutions you can put in practice today. So there's a little bit of a dichotomy in whether you
I like how you started at the
big
beginning
company.
kind of talking about personalized medicine, what's possible. And I do find there's this tension between the macro and the micro in
Yep.
this field. And there's a tendency to want to see all the financial economic benefit in finding one size fits all macro. But really the brilliance is going to be able to create cheap ways to be micro, right? Is that largely correct?
Yeah.
And is the science going to take us there in a way that helps that individual and that person's healthcare and their personal tapestry of all the things you just described in a way that they're going to be able to afford?
Yeah, I think it'll improve access tremendously. We already have the ability for Penn Medicine patients to use an AI chatbot essentially to get triaged to the right place and to get an appointment quickly. And it works remarkably well, and hopefully to steer them to a person when the chatbot isn't good enough. So I'm worried about it making mistakes, but it certainly improves access.
Since you changed your, go ahead.
I'll give you just one other example. There's something called Chart Hero that goes through all your medical records and makes a really concise summary of your medical history, and that is so useful if you go to an emergency room, see a doctor you've never seen
Right.
before, and they can go through all of your past records, because a physician could never spend the time to do that, especially if you have a complex medical history, in the 5 or 10 minutes that they have to see
Yeah.
you. So that's a game changer.
When you're with all your CAR T-cell stuff, and you're like it's amazing, just so the audience knows, you're recognized for, your deep understandings of everything around congenital heart disease, heart failure, stem cell biology, epigenetics. You're big in this area. If you had Claude way back when, would you have done more?
No question. So look, when I started, I was sequencing DNA manually and running big gels, reading each base pair one by one. Right? I mean, the speed at which stuff gets done these days is enormous. And of course, we would have done more.
That's
if
fascinating.
we had those tools.
So you change your entire day to be down here. Do you want to hang out a little bit more? I can get rid of Sudip, and then we can hang out a little bit more.
Sure.
Okay, Sudip. Let's give a big round of applause to Sudip Parikh, President of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Sudip, thank you, buddy.